Session of the Burns Township Board of Education. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We've already done the salute to the flag. Can I do roll call?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Yes. Mrs. Horner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Dr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mrs. Pugh?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
Here.
Mrs. Woolridge?
Here.
Mr. Martari? Here. Mr. Stiles? Here. Madam President?
This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Burns Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and the town clerk. We very much welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during regular meetings that the public is invited to speak. One time is early in the meeting before the board votes, and you may speak about any item that is listed on the agenda. Towards the end of the meeting, there's another public forum to address any topic that you wish. When you approach the microphone, please sign in and state your name and address. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather they are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. Any board responses to public comments will be addressed during board forum or committee reports. So I also wanted to mention that the meeting is being recorded. So now it's time for our board presentation. There's going to be a district technology update, and we're going to go down into the audience.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Here with us, we have Christopher Barone, who's the Director of IT.
Good evening.
Matt Hall, who's our Supervisor of Science and Technology. And I brought down the second mic just for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So I'm going to get started here. We're going to kind of talk quickly about our technology vision and our plan. And in order to start us off, I wanted to kind of put in the quote here to kind of framework what we're really talking about here. This is from a rural American teacher back in 1928. So in order to talk about a 3-year tech plan and a technology vision, I kind of wanted to frame basically what a technology plan is, how it works. Then we're going to kind of go over the history of the technology plan, where we've come from to where we are now. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hall at that point, and he's going to talk about our current technology plan. So our 3-year tech plan is essentially recommendations about technology progression. It's presented by the Technology Committee. The committee is comprised of K through 12 staff members. It is also made up of technology teachers, media specialists, and it's chaired by the Director of Technology and the Technology Supervisor. When a plan is drafted, it is then presented to the superintendent and then eventually adopted by the board. After the board adopts the plan is actually sent over to the county approves the plan, and then sends it over to the NJDOE, which gives final approval on the plan that it meets the specific requirements, and then you're allowed to publicly post the plan. So there have been some recent changes to the 3-year technology plan, which kind of makes this presentation a little bit different. Prior, the 3-year technology plan had basically expired by the state in 2013. At that time, the state decided that in order to enroll in E-rate, it was no longer required for school districts to maintain a technology plan in order to receive that E-rate funding. So at that point, our previous plan, which had expired in that year in 2013, we did not renew or have to submit a plan to the state in order to receive our continual E-rate funding. So the next section here, I want to kind of go over the history of our previous plans, our previous 3-year technology plan. So the previous technology plan, the goals were to maintain educational technology tools. Basically what this means is things like Microsoft Word, Office suites, talking about learning management systems, as well as the back-end type of computer networking that we maintain on a daily basis within the technology department to provide day-to-day curricular instruction through technology tools. The other portion of this plan, goal number 2, was to achieve reliable access to the necessary technology to prepare students to address authentic 21st century issues. So that, in a nutshell, is essentially kind of across with the curriculum and the technology direction. And what we had done in the past is, for that particular goal, was the updating of all of our fiber network in the entire district. We made a big push in 2010 to sign with a new ISP, Optimum Lightpath. We then upgraded all of our old fiber T1 connections in the elementary and the middle school. We upgraded them to gigabit connections, and then we upgraded the internet bandwidth. This provided a little bit more of a reliable network, which we currently didn't have before. And then those particular reliability on the network then tied into some curricular goals in terms of 21st century, and to achieve 21st century classroom initiatives. The other goal, the 4th goal here, the 3rd goal is integrated instructional strategies to leverage that technology. So typically, 3-year tech plan previously was formed around mainly hardware and technology purchases such as devices, etc. This particular plan, we decided to delve in a little bit in terms of curriculum. Matt's going to talk a lot more about that with our current plan. It was really just a high-level goal that we wanted to achieve, and we wanted to be able to incorporate that into our professional learning, which is the 4th goal. We wanted to understand that when you take these type of recommendations, that in order to turn that back into the classroom, you obviously have to train the staff on how to be able to do so. You can't just drop a piece of technology in the lab and just expect that an educational outcome is going to happen. No, you obviously have to train. So, at the end of the 2013 year, the Technology Committee got together the following school year to evaluate the goals, as we would normally do in a 3-year tech plan cycle. So, during the evaluation, the Technology Committee was very pleased at a lot of the outcomes from the prior plan. We revisited all the goals, and we felt that they had championed most of the goals put forth. However, we fell short on goal 2, which was providing necessary access to the 21st century technologies and developing those 21st century skills. Now, falling short and taking a look at this unrealized goal, it wasn't really pertaining to the access of the actual internet bandwidth speed. We took a very close look at this. Student-owned devices. One of the issues that we currently have is, in order for a student to access educational resources within and outside of school, they have a plethora of devices at their home, in school, and the obstacles to obtain these educational resources were great. It's very difficult for the technology team to then be able to manage and provide these resources to an extra 6,000 devices that were completely different on different platforms. One of the bigger complaints that we had is students at night doing homework. In order to get access to, say, the personal drive that's in school, they had to use either a web client or a third-party client that they have to download. Now, that became a big issue because then you're dealing with 3 platforms. You have Linux, Mac, and PC. And any number of those 3 platforms could be going wrong at any certain time with any number of particular reasons. Another issue that we had was lack of reliable classroom technology. That's not to say that the staff devices weren't reliable. It's to say that, unfortunately, at the time, desktop machines were slowly being phased out in certain areas of schools. We didn't have enough funding to replace them. Also, in the prior plan, they had implemented mobile learning carts, and these particular carts, unfortunately, were not refreshed, or if they were refreshed, the devices were limited due to some network issues that we'll talk about in the previous slide. So these aging carts in these classrooms led to the staff, unfortunately, you have a 45-minute window in order to deliver this curriculum and deliver your lesson, and 15 minutes of that actual window was eaten up by a device booting, student having a problem logging in, all sorts of issues that led to that being an unrealized goal. Finally, the last piece that was unrealized was the BYOD. And unfortunately, the BYOD was a great and wonderful idea, but it did have a couple flaws that really tripped us up. Again, access to resources. At the time when we had implemented BYOD, the cell phone technology was not as great as it is. Not every student was bringing in a laptop at that time. So you had a little bit of an imbalance in the classroom. So those individual teachers couldn't rely on that day-to-day consistency saying, here's my lesson, I need everyone to bring out their device and be able to use it. And when that actually had happened, we go back to that first unrealized goal of that student-owned devices. Then you ran into the issue of that particular device wasn't connecting to the network, couldn't get access to the resource, or the resource was planned around, only worked on PC but didn't work on a Mac. So you have a lot of these things that came into play when we're trying to do this BYOD. That relates to that platform dependency. Finally, difficult sustaining staff training. Now this was another issue that had come about, is essentially we had rolled out the BYOD, there was some initial training, however, we didn't have enough time to maintain that training. This is still, unfortunately, an ongoing professional development problem, is we need to be able to sustain staff training and things come into play, and unfortunately that was put on the bottom of the list. Finally, we did unfortunately have some isolated incidents that led to a little bit of reluctance to staff, where they had tried a BYOD, they had a really bad experience in the classroom, and then they never went back to it. So a couple things changed after the plan's expiration. One of those things was the coming of PARCC. So basically PARCC necessitated a large infusion of compatible devices that we had to look for. BYOD no longer became feasible because you cannot test PARCC on a BYOD device. So the big challenge that was presented to the technology committee was which device should be purchased. Here were a couple of the things that they were looking at when they were taking a look at those particular devices. Is it cost effective? Does it provide a stable testing platform? Is it PARCC compatible? One of the other big challenges was long battery life. Will it be able to last for an entire day of testing? And then finally, was it small enough to fit on a student desk? When this came about, we decided to do a pilot, as we do with a lot of things. So we piloted a lot of devices, iPads, Androids, laptops, Chromebooks. The initial Chromebooks that we had piloted were actually really bad. They performed very poorly. It left the committee very uneasy on how to move forward. There was a little glimmer of light though. In the third quarter of 2013, Google released an updated version of their Chromebook, and it seemed to finally open up the gateways a little bit to kind of where we had moved. That particular device, when we piloted it, it tested extremely well. It actually exceeded the committee's expectations. So this is where we began to realize kind of our direction. So during that particular time when we were piloting these devices, the technology department itself also took a look at these particular devices and actually started to realize that there were some pain points within the department that we weren't able to sustain, and we're looking at this platform as a whole, this Google Labs platform, and we realized, wow, this is going to be able to help us out. We had some administrative problems with our current equipment. We were at the point where we were pulling servers out of buildings and centralizing them. However, our application software, even though it's labeled enterprise, was not working at an enterprise level. We were having major issues with email. Email was a huge pain point. It was a really big time sink within the technology department. So we had initially solved these piloted tests, and then we realized that let's start planning and paving the future to eventually move the district to a GAFE domain. So during that time, it also played hand in hand with the curriculum piece as well and PARCC. We wanted to be able to increase that technology infusion, and we knew that this was the platform that we wanted to move on. And as well as increase that technology infusion into the classroom, it's also supported by PARCC. So it hit a whole bunch of checkboxes all at once, and it was a very, it was one of those epiphany or aha moments that we currently had. So the software was familiar to students. Even before we went to GAFE, a lot of students had personal Gmail accounts. It was ubiquitous and no cost. What we liked about the platform itself is it worked on anything. So we revisit that BYOD problems about having specific software and having issues with those particular devices no longer became a relevant problem within the room. All right, and finally provided enhanced classroom functionalities like collaboration, generic new learning paths, and outcomes. The hardware itself was fiscally responsible. So we're talking about the Chromebooks. They were much more reasonable than, say, an iPad or a laptop. You're not paying full price, full retail for an $800 device. They were much, much cheaper. Easy to use, and for us in the technology department, it's easy for us to manage. So in the 2014-15 year, we decided to purchase a fleet of Chromebooks. After testing multiple manufacturers that particular summer, we decided to purchase 1,600 Chromebooks in 2014, and they were Dell Chromebooks. We had switched from Samsung to Dell because of form factor. We looked at a lot of manufacturers, Dell, Lenovo, Acer, Asus, and at the end of the day, Dell really was head and shoulders above what everyone else was producing, the reliable, rugged, cost-effective device that we felt that we could put in a classroom and not really have to worry about it. Finally, the PTO was very generous in making multiple donations, which also expanded the district's fleet during that time. So at this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Hall.
We'll do questions if that's at the end.
Okay. So a little historical look back in our 3-year tech plans, and now looking forward. So last year, our district tech committee decided to get together. We no longer were required to produce a technology plan or develop one. And we saw it as an opportunity. There's much value in having a technology plan for informing purchases, directions, the kinds of software applications and things like that that we bring in, and to have that document that everyone can go to and provide focus. But we didn't need to do it anymore. So we saw it as an opportunity to develop a technology plan that met our needs rather than fulfill the requirements of the state. So in the past, the tech plan, as Chris outlined earlier, was mostly about hardware. And there was an implication that if you brought in this hardware, there would be some learning outcomes that were positive associated with that. But the learning outcomes were secondary to the hardware. And so our technology committee decided when we started to put together our plan, we were going to flip that the other way. Focus on learning outcomes and think about the hardware in this sort of secondary. Okay, so a proposed new 3-year tech plan. So I mentioned last year in 2014, our committee got together and we began to think about what direction do we want to take technology in for the district. Okay? Our committee consists of representatives from K-12, all 4 buildings. We have media specialists, we have computer teachers. So we try and get really a good representation of the entire district on the committee. Okay? We also knew that we had some major technology initiatives in the stream, right? We had our Chromebook infusion, we had our Google Apps for Education infusion, and we wanted to make sure that our technology plan sort of moved in lockstep with those things. The worst case scenario, as far as we were concerned, is that we purchased technology and we moved in a direction of technology that was dictated by PARCC, right, and not by the learning outcomes that we really wanted to see. Right? We didn't want these Chromebooks or whatever the device of question was to just be a testing device and not something that could be used on a day-to-day basis in the classroom. So the committee's first charge was we wanted to revisit and update our technology mission and vision. Okay, so I have our mission statement here, and you can see that at the core of our mission statement are those 21st century skills that Chris mentioned earlier. And the outcomes, the student outcomes of creativity, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and collaboration. Okay? So that was the goal. We wanted the infusion of the technology to enable these outcomes. Okay? And so what we do as a committee is we go back and we always look to that mission to make sure that whatever decisions or recommendations we're making are in alignment with that mission. So along with that, we developed a vision. What do we want technology to look like down the road, right? Maybe 3 years down the road is a bit ambitious, but what do we want technology ultimately to look like here in Berners Township? And what came out of that was really a three-stranded vision. So I'll offer them one strand at a time. The first one, I mentioned before, 21st century learning skills are at the core of this decision making, right? At the core of what we want the outcomes to be. Now that is something that has been evolving in the state and been evolving in the core curriculum content standards and things like that. And now those skills have evolved and now we have career-ready practices. And so our strands really need to support those career-ready practices as well. Chris mentioned before that we want this single ubiquitous platform and productivity tools too, right? So that the tools that the students are using here in school, they also have access to at home, okay? And so Google provided a nice platform for that. So, you know, we looked at, you know, other comparative types of things like Microsoft, their online suites and things like that. And what we saw with the Google platform is that's what a lot of the students were using anyway because it's free, right? And when we go home, if I'm a student, I'm doing my work here, when I go home I have access to it, and it's easy, it's the same tools, I can collaborate. Maybe it doesn't have all the same bells and whistles that a Microsoft Office suite does, but it has 99% of the bells and whistles that I'm going to be using anyway, right? And so that single platform, we didn't need to worry, what are the students using at home? Do they have a MacBook at home? Are they trying to do this on an iPad, some sort of Android tablet, something like that? Okay? So strand one, outcome. Okay? What's the learning outcome? And the learning outcome, again, is 21st century readiness. Okay. So career-ready practices, that's something that's sort of new. And it's something that the state has been really communicating. They put together these beautiful posters. So I thought, you know, we would really be missing an opportunity not to share this wonderful poster. But you can see, it's really these practices are 12 practices that go hand in hand with those 21st century skills that I mentioned before. Creativity, communication, problem solving, those types of things. Okay, strand two. So we have strand one, outcomes, strand two, tools. Okay, so I mentioned the flip of the old plan where it was tools first, maybe some outcomes second. So when I say tools, what I'm talking about are the hardware and digital resources. okay? And we can't even say software anymore. We changed that to digital resources because many of the tools that the students are using and the teachers are, web apps and things like that, not a software product, on the old CD or DVD that you put into the DVD drive. So, along with this strand, what our vision includes is a standardized classroom. What's the standardized technology layout of the classroom? What's that 21st century classroom look like? Primary, sort of the heart and soul of that classroom would be the display solution, right? What's the display device? What's the display surface, right? Is it some sort of a projector? Is it a great big LCD touchscreen? What is that, okay? But standardized. Staff devices and digital resources that our staff have. Many of them are aging out at this point, and so we need to decide what do they get replaced with, right? And the answer isn't the same thing that it used to be because you can't even buy those things anymore, right? You'd have to go find an antique store somewhere to buy more of them. Along with that, student devices and digital resources. And also, we recognize more and more it's important that we are aware of and have a focus on tools that protect students' privacy, right? It's very easy for that personal private information to get out into the digital ether, and we want to make sure that the resources we're bringing in, that's something that's front and center in our decision-making process. And finally, making sure we have a reliable and secure network that's scaling with all the other things that we have as well, right? The network needs to scale with the demands that are put on it. Okay, so strand 1, outcomes, strand 2, tools, and strand 3 would be staff training, right? Staff support. So as Chris mentioned earlier, we can't just take these tools and resources and things like that and sort of throw them at the teachers and then expect those outcomes to happen sort of magically, right? So we know that there are really a couple things that have to happen. First, those resources have to be reliable, right? It's got to be something that me as a teacher can count on having. So if I can count on having a particular hardware device, maybe a Chromebook for each of my students, and I can count on the network working, and I can count on the software working, then I'm going to plan for it, right? If I can't count on all those things, well, I have to be crazy to plan for it, right? Because nobody wants to have a room full of students and it's not working, right? And so you're losing, you feel like that hourglass is just dripping time away and the sweat running down your back, for the guys, not the ladies, running down your back, and you're feeling stressed out and like the whole lesson is a disaster, right? So unless the teachers can count on the technology, they won't plan on. And so part of that is making sure that they have the support that they need in the form of training and that sort of thing to effectively infuse it into the lessons. And we don't do technology here for technology's sake, right? We do technology because we're hoping for an outcome. And so one of the models for technology infusion I have up here is the SAMR. We call it the SAMR model, which is really a model for technology infusion where you move from a substitution level, like I'm taking notes on a Chromebook instead of on a notepad. Well, is that really adding to the learning outcomes? Not really, right? But we move it to this R level where we're re-envisioning the learning, right? Like maybe I want to learn about another culture, and so I'm going to go on a digital field trip, and then I'm going to engage in conversation with students of that culture. That's something that I can't do with a textbook, I can't do with a notebook, or a pen, or even store-bought ink, right? Like we saw in that quote in the beginning. And so we sort of threw that up there to have everybody start thinking, Because these kinds of technology decisions aren't new, right? Technology, we have to decide what to do with it. But there's a risk of doing nothing too, right? If we don't do anything, then we have a situation that was alluded to in that rural teacher kind of thing where, you know, where we're teaching kids how to mix ink. And maybe they don't need to do that, right? Okay. So, SAMR model, here's just a real quick one. I promise no quiz on this at the end of the presentation today. Okay? One other thing is that staff development model, right? Investigating models which utilize our technology support specialists to do a better job of sustained staff development. Okay? So these one-off kind of workshops, you know that's not the best way to do it. Why do we always do it that way? Because that's sort of where we have constraints in it. You know, we don't have the kind of models that always allow for the sustained staff development, sustained just-in-time. When I say just-in-time, I mean I'm getting that training as I need it. Maybe even somebody right there with me the first time I use it in the classroom. So we'll be looking into models like that. That's our vision that we have, you know, but we figured out what that best way of doing it is. Okay. SAMR model again. So we have our mission, we have our vision, we know what we sort of imagine in a perfect Berners Township, what it would look like down the road. But we also have a bunch of questions, okay? And so I'm going to share some of those questions with you, and then our next steps are going to be to try to answer those questions, right? And that's something that we invite everyone to be a part of. Okay, so question number one, we mentioned that we have the standardized classroom. Well, what does it look like? Right, that's a question. Standardized classroom, great, but we want to make sure it's standardized with the best possible and most, you know, sustainable sort of solution. And we also have a sub-question that maybe it's not going to be the same standard all the way K-12 every subject, right? Is it a different standard when we're looking at the elementary school versus the middle school versus the high school? And is it different in math versus social studies versus language arts? We don't know the answer to those questions yet. That's to be investigated. Okay. Question two, and this is a big one. There's a lot of buzz about this, a lot of talk about this one in the district. So currently, with our Chromebooks that we have in district, we have about a 2-to-1 student-to-device ratio. Okay? 2-to-1 student-to-device ratio. So the question is the time right here in Berners Township to begin moving towards that 1-to-1 environment? Right? That's not a new question here. Right? But we need a new solution. So that was an old question where the solution was bring your own device. Right? And at the time, that was a terrific solution for that question. Right? We'll get more technology into the classroom. You know, the greatest benefit is realized when you have a one-to-one relationship or one-to-one environment where the students have a personal relationship with that device, right? They have it configured to what they need. They have all the apps and things like that that are personalized and set up for what they need, right? I know where all the things are. I know what icons are where. I know how I have everything sort of organized in my way. I have all my preferences set. That's when it becomes the most powerful learning tool. We all do that already, right? Everybody's walking around. You have a device. You've got a computer in your pocket most days, right? So is the time right? Well, we know that bring your own device solution is no longer feasible. We can't do it, right? Because of that PARCC thing. We can't do it. So it didn't really fly the way we wanted it to, Chris mentioned, for a lot of reasons. But it doesn't make any sense for us to keep going down that road, right? You know, we can't chase after that and try and fix that because it's not even a viable option anymore. So it would make sense for that option. We already have a 2-to-1 environment with Chromebooks. Is the time right for 1-to-1? So that's a big question that we have. That's something to be investigated. And third, I mentioned before this support model. What is the most effective professional development support model for Bernards Township? And so this is a tricky one because there are lots of great models out there. And we can see what a lot of other school districts or corporations, things like that, how are they supporting their users, their technology users. But what's the right model for us here, for what we're trying to accomplish and for our staff members and things like that? So those are our big 3 questions right now, and that's what we'll be investigating over the next year. So next steps. So we know we need to investigate these, as I mentioned. So we'll be establishing a technology steering committee, okay? Which is really a subcommittee of the district technology. And so we'll be inviting folks to participate in that. And our hope is, and I'll sort of throw this out, our hope is that we have maybe a board member or 2 on our committee. Community members, teachers, obviously, building administrators, things like that, because it's really tough to sort of figure out what the best solutions are if it's just me and Chris, like, think of that, right? What do you think, Chris? I don't know, what do you think, right? We need to actually go to the audience here, all right? As part of this, we'll be conducting research. We've already started to reach out to some districts that have some different models and talk about feasibility of taking some site visits there. It's always a good idea, as far as we're concerned, to learn from other people what works, and even better, what went horribly wrong, so we can make sure that doesn't happen to us. And then ultimately, we'll be formulating some recommendations for the district technology committee. And one thing that I haven't put up here is that tech plan that we started to put together. And lo and behold, we make our own tech plan that we like now in our format. And so we just found out that the state is now going to require a tech plan again. Okay? Good news is they flipped too, and so those learning outcomes are now forefront. And so what our plan is to take the plan that we put together, reformat it to the way they want it, and you'll be seeing that in the next few months. Okay? My guess would be probably in that maybe or early we'll have that there. Okay. All right. So we'll leave you with one more quote from John Dewey, not the Dewey Decimal System Dewey. Okay, different John Dewey, or different Dewey. I'm not even sure what the Dewey Decimal System Dewey is. And now, questions.
Thank you. Really interesting presentation. I love our mission that our learning outcomes should be driving the technology instead of vice versa. And my first question relates just to that. I think all of us were a little uncomfortable with the fact that we had to invest so much money into Chromebooks because of the state mandate. But now that we've done the deed and we have the Chromebooks, I know we're using them in the classrooms for other applications as well. But what percentage of the time would you say the Chromebooks are active and the students are engaged in using them? Are they, when we're not doing standardized testing, are they out 100% of the time? Or are they only being used 50% of the time? Are we maximizing their potential?
From my observations, and we have a bunch of teachers there, the Chromebooks are being used about as much as they can be used, right? So there is some charging that needs to happen, and there's some pushing it around the hallways to get it where it needs to go. Otherwise, they're used. Am I right? And in fact, if we had more Chromebooks, I mean, everybody's always saying more.
I think that's great because we took what started out as a lemon of the situation and we're turning it into lemonade by making the best use out of it.
Yeah, Chris mentioned before, we have to do this PARCC thing. What's the best device? And we started off like that. And then we started thinking, what else can we do with like, what are the other outcomes, right? And so very quickly we moved from what are we going to use to administer the park to how many birds can we kill with one stone kind of thing. And, as you saw, we killed a whole flock of birds with that one stone. And so I feel pretty good about, I feel great about the Chromebook decision that we made. And all through PARCC, we saw all these horror stories happening all around, and we didn't have any of those. Okay, the worst part of PARCC was, we had to take the Chromebooks out of the classrooms from instruction to use them for testing. And it was like cutting off everybody's arm, right?
But that's good. I appreciate the efforts in getting the right devices in for it. My second and final question, I promise. You talked a little bit about making sure the technology is reliable. And a huge part of that is the bandwidth and having the right bandwidth to support all the applications that are being run. So my question is twofold, I guess. The first part is I know there are some plans in place to improve the bandwidth to the district, which is a real challenge. The second part of my question, I'm going to digress a little, but I know a lot of parents are concerned about this. As the parent of a freshman at Ridge, myself and many other parents were lamenting on the data overage fees that our children were putting on our accounts because they come home and talk about how bad the Wi-Fi is at Ridge. So part of the increasing bandwidth plan is obviously going to fix that problem or improve it. But I also want to know, now I know my child is only going on the Wi-Fi for educational opportunities. But for the kids who are trying to get to things like Instagram and Snapchat, what sort of precautions do we have in place so all of the students have the opportunity to use the bandwidth for the educational opportunities while not taking away from educational time from all those other distractions that they could possibly get to?
That's a good question. So to answer the second part of that question, Instagram, Facebook, a couple other social media applications are blocked district-wide. Staff can't get to them, students can't get to them. The current woes at Ridge High with the students, I took the opportunity to reach out to the student government a couple of weeks ago to physically sit down with the students and kind of open up a conversation and really kind of leave myself open to them on how they want to progress. And the first thing that came out of basically the mouths was the band was terrible. I realized that we had to put in a bandwidth limitation for the students when we had initially designed the Wi-Fi infrastructure over at high school. We had done that at the time because we were constrained on bandwidth totally coming out of the high school, aging equipment, and the physical infrastructure. That was when we had the tech plan a while ago. The outcome of the technology was to make sure the staff had what they needed in order to perform their day-to-day jobs. As we're progressing forward now, we've done a lot of upgrades to the wireless over there. Half of the building is completely AC access points right now, and they're running full AC. That's 4 bands, so the speeds are astronomical. The thing is, we've just started adjusting the bandwidth slowly to give them more opportunity to use their devices and more usable bandwidth. The only issue that we're going to run into, it's going to be a balance. So right now, we're kind of figuring out that balance. I've opened a couple of things up. I'm waiting to hear back from the student government and student government president to basically say, is it good? Is it bad? Do you need more? If you need more, I can certainly increase it. I don't want to open it wide open because then we're going to have a problem when that staff is going to have an issue connecting. So it's going to be a fine line in between, but I am acutely aware that they've been having those problems and I'm trying to address it. And it's why I wanted to reach out to them to kind of give them a technology direction and outcome they're choosing, so they can choose where they want to go. I even opened up the conversation as, do you feel that Facebook or Instagram would be good to have on as an educational tool? Do you feel that you could talk to your staff or talk to the teachers and see if that's something that they would implement in some way in the classroom that would be of value? Initially, the feedback was they don't seem like they're ready for that, but you never know. There might be a day when they might want that on. Or I even turned it to them that they can have it on in certain areas. So again, I'm really trying to reach out to them and have them make that technology decision on how we kind of progress and give them a little bit more input and feel into what we're doing in these technology decisions as opposed to a blanket. This is what I say and deal with it type of deal. Answer the second part of your question is we're planning on upgrading the total internet bandwidth to 1 gigabit per second, which is pretty fast. And on top of that, Mr. McClark and myself were talking about doing core upgrades. I have kind of put out a 3-year plan of my own in terms of financial budgeting, and I have a progression of where I want to start updating internal switches to 10 gigabit, as well as in the high school. Over here in the middle school, I'm talking about doing full AC. We have AC access points, but they're not running at full AC. If you see some of the ones on the wall, how they're amber, that means that they're only running 2 antennas right now. But hopefully next year they'll be running 4, so then you're getting much more throughput through those access points. So again, we have a vision and direction of where we want to go. It's just basically at this point planning it out and implementing it. Cool. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about the Chromebooks. So you said that in 2013, like the current version of the Chromebook became available. And then in 2014-15, you purchased a lot of them. So if we were to purchase additional Chromebooks, have they upgraded them? How long do you see the how long do you see the ones that we currently have lasting for us? And then if we were to purchase more, are there new models? What's coming in the future?
So that's a good question. So we talked about the 2013 not being good. It was the software. So the underlying operating system, like the Chromium as they termed it, the software itself wasn't great. It was buggy. It didn't do a lot of functionality. The Chromebooks themselves as a hardware device, we're looking at least 3 years, 4 years to get out of the Chromebooks. So far, the one I have here, I've had this for 2 years. Not going to believe I haven't had a single problem with it. I beat it up. I dropped it a couple times. It's perfectly fine. So moving forward, the nice thing about that, Google is very controlling of the hardware. So they're telling these vendors like Dell, Samsung, Acer, Asus, here's the hardware you can do. It's going to be an Intel board. It's going to be this model. It's going to be between 2 and 4 or 8 gigs of RAM. You're only going to be able to use this graphic card. So that standardized moving forward, it's always going to be something that's going to be in control, and then they're going to be able to build that software around it. Because I think initially they had opened it up a little bit too much because it's a Linux-based platform, and that's how flexible it is. And then they realized, hey, we have to rein this in a little bit in order to get a better product, and that's what they have. So moving forward, I don't foresee any issues where they're just going to get faster, they're just going to have more functions, features to them. We currently have 2 Lenovo Chromebooks that we had demoed. They are actually flipped, they flip open in the touchscreen. And I do foresee that in the next couple of years, you're going to see the migration of Chromebooks go from this to that particular model where they're going to also include a touchscreen on it. And it's going to be more indicative of how the technology moves forward, and who knows what we're going to see in the next couple of years. So.
And what's happening with the price?
The price is basically remaining the same. The interesting thing about the Chromebooks is the manufacturers, obviously they have this very thin margin on the Chromebooks. It's going to cost them X to, put together the hardware in it, and then they have to put it together in one of their facilities and then ship it out. So basically, that particular stuff, I don't see it going up. I really think the only time it's going to go up is when they introduce a new tech piece like a touchscreen, things of that nature. Basically, it's going to go down a little bit, but it's really going to sustain currently at the current level because they know that they can't sell, undersell, or oversell just because of the hardware because they lose their shirts.
I have I need to get my glasses from the reading, but anyway, I have a few questions. The bandwidth, I know it's been a concern for a long time, you're well aware of it. Just wondering where we are now. I believe you will do something with Ridge and WAMs.
Ridge is currently, we've opened up bandwidth for the students a little bit more on the Wi-Fi. I'm waiting to hear back. William Anning is a little bit different. That kind of goes back to the BYOD policy, which is usually I leave that up to the building principal to make that decision. So currently we don't have an open network over here for the students. And there's been some talk about that because of the park coming up. And we want to actually be able to utilize the other equipment during that time. So that's something that I know Karen's more likely going to turn on right now. But in terms of overall bandwidth, we did a big upgrade in wireless in every building except for Ridge, which I started doing a little bit more this year. So currently, William Manning is in a good spot. They have one wireless access point per room. So you can walk around and you can see the access points in the physical rooms themselves. So we were kind of planning ahead in terms of, PARCC and maybe that question that we talked about, one-to-one, or even if we're talking about using devices in the room, we wanted to make sure that they were outfitted, that they had the right technology.
So are you also working with student council and LAMs to see if they need?
Not yet, but now that you bring that to my attention, I can certainly do something with
Well,
that as well.
I'm not telling you what to do. Just, I thought it may be going downhill to the lower grades. The other question was the elementary schools. Do they have a Wi-Fi speeds that they need? Is there some issue there? Do we need to work on anything there?
No, it was one thing I probably missed in the presentation. When we talked about the 2010 to 2013 technology plan and updating the technology, one of the big pieces in that plan was updating all the wireless in every building. So basically, K through 8, there's an access point in every room. They're all brand new AC access points. So I'm hoping that that's going to get us at least another 5 years before we have to think about updating. Currently, this year, the IEEE, the Internet Engineers Association, is going to basically release a new version of AC to make it even faster. Their whole goal when they put this AC implementation together, the standard, their whole idea behind it was they want to be able to stream video on devices and have like 40, 60 of them in a room and be able to stream video. And that's kind of their goal, and we're slowly getting to that implementation point. So what will happen is I'll be able to update all the APs, and as long as we have the infrastructure on the back end to support it, we should have plenty of bandwidth.
So my understanding in summary is we're okay, elementary school, middle school most likely, and Ridge High School, the students need one. But the teachers and administrators are fine,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So you're working with the student council and
Correct.
and we probably don't need to buy any more hardware?
We're going to need to purchase a little bit more. We have a couple wings that we still have to outfit. A lot of the major expenses are done over there. It's just a little bit of the minor stuff. The problem that we had is the hardware that was in there. At the time when we had upgraded, it was newer, so we didn't want to upgrade the hardware, but now we're moving to a different platform, so we didn't want to pull it out, but it's going to be end of life soon, so we have to kind of get off of that particular hardware and then move to this current setup that we have.
Okay, that was one set of questions. The other one was, well, that's gone, but the one-to-one. So currently we have, that page really set up a lot of questions, but it said, I think, 2-to-1 ratio in the high school for Chromebooks, maybe the same thing in middle school. I don't know if that's a district-wide or just in the high schools, but
It's a district-wide.
district-wide?
Yeah.
It was
So-
grades 3 to 12.
Okay, so then if we are really considering one-to-one, is that what the new steering committee is going to review, or?
That's one of the
Is that what you
questions.
want us to consider? Is that something,
Well, what
that
we,
to me is a
what
lot
we
of
want to
questions. I have a
consider,
lot here.
the question is the time limit, okay, for us. So that, we're not making a recommendation at this time to
You're
move
not
to one-to-one. What we are recommending is that that's a question that we investigate in order to formulate a recommendation.
Okay, that's fine. And then, which I of course would support, but I don't know what everyone else thinks. But the other thing is the life cycle. So this 2-to-1 ratio that we have, I don't think they're all bought at the same time. So are we, I think we're replacing some of them, right?
We're planning on replacing some of them when they come up to get replaced. I can't remember what year that's in. I want to say
Buying them all at the same time. The initial.
the initial
The
fee of
initials are
660.
all bought at the same time. So we had no other carts sitting around of any other computers.
We're talking about specifically Chromebooks.
So this is just Chromebooks.
Right, those are what are being used.
Well, it just says device ratio, so I thought it was other,
Right, well, we do, I
Cards
mean,
we
we
use
do have
that
some
now.
laptop cards.
we did.
There are a couple of iPad cards, there's an iPad mini card, but those are not, that's not something that like an average teacher can count on having. They're like specialty parts in different places, so when we put this together, we were referring to.
Just the Chromebooks.
And Nick clarified, the grades that are primarily using those are 3 through 12. So they're not, I mean, there is some second grade in some of the buildings using it, but the access is primarily for teachers in grades 3 through 12.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. I'm quite impressed. But you're also talking about what's happening to the world of technology. And instead of being old at 60, you're making everybody old at 40 and then 30 and it may even be in the 20s soon. The whole concept, and you can't stop. Once you finish, the whole thing's it's just continuous. It's a very scary trend. A lot of my data I can't even access anymore because the tools used to collect them, not only is the body of knowledge expanding every 8 years, whatever it is doubling, this is going to continue to go crazy. I empathize with the teachers, with your roles. It's going to be critical to try and train everyone to keep up with this. And obsolescence is a problem. So at a very young age, I'm impressed. Good presentation.
Thank you.
I had just a comment on the one-to-one idea. I can totally visualize, like K-3 to 8, because I see what they're doing with the Chromebooks now. I'm just curious at the high school, because based on my own kids and some of their friends, they get very attached to their own devices that they're used to. And my ninth grader literally does everything on her iPhone. It drives me absolutely bonkers, because it's such a tiny little screen. She's doing her homework on there and working in Google Docs, and I keep saying, why don't you set the computer into it? So I'm just curious, how much are the Chromebooks being used at Ridge? And if you did think about one-to-one thing, would you anticipate that kids would be comfortable giving up their own device and going on a Chromebook instead? I'm just curious.
So there are many models of one-to-one. So one-to-one does not all mean the same thing. And so as part of this, when we talk about are we ready for one-to-one here, what does that look like, right? And does that mean you can only use this device? Or does this mean that this device is something you can count on and is reliable in the classroom? So, you raise a great question. What's the role of your phone versus a Chromebook versus a laptop, right? And in a professional environment, like an office environment, those are things that the folks there have their phone, and they have their laptop or computer or whatever. And they're using them for different things, right? I mean, I think we've probably all had the experience where you realize that you're reading email on your computer and your phone at the same time. Or is that just me? I have some days when I have a tablet, I have my phone, I have the laptop, I have 2 monitors, and I have stuff on all of the screens at the same time, and then I realize, wow, I have ADD or something, right? So that the ability to be productive with your devices is important. And so what does that look like? And as Mike alluded to, those skills are constantly evolving, right? And so, we have this vision, but in some places it's a little more fuzzy, and we need to bring it into focus. And what does that one-to-one look like? Does that mean that as a high school student I'm taking that device home, right? Or does that mean that there's a charging station in my homeroom that I put it in and I pick it up in the morning, right? And Google has really changed the rules with that, with GAFE, because it used to be a one-to-one is something that even at the low grades, I'm taking that device home with me. But do I need to do that anymore if I have access to all of my work on my Google Drive in the cloud, right? And so what does that mean? So those are all the kinds of logistics that are to be explored, right? And at what level do you start? And what does it look like in each band? And so making sure that we have this learning outcome piece front and center is the important thing, right? So in constantly going back, that's our check, right? That's the meter stick that we measure all of these things with is, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the best way to get there? You know, that kind of thing. So, you know, great questions. And, you know, I can give you answers of what I think now, but where, you know, I want to investigate and see, you know, what's right for us here. You know, we could go to, like, Nick's kids go to school and, you know, we can see what they're doing. Is that the right solution for
He's
Rick?
got a Chromebook that looks like it's been through World War III. That he works in his bed. He's got a Chromebook and he's reading on his phone. So, you know, I mean, they're using whatever to do whatever. And I think our challenge is when we think about, you know, one-to-one, and we think about some of the, you know, the curricular outcomes that we're trying to have, is that we want to be able to make sure that we're working in this environment where our teachers have this level of expectation about what the children have access to. They can rely and expect that children are going to be able to do certain things with the tools that they have every day if we want to move to that environment on a daily basis, one-to-one. I think that that's kind of what that means. To the point of, you know, which device, every kid have to have the same device, not necessarily, but I think a lot of it is that reliability. I mean, you know, when I was teaching, you knew that every kid had paper and pencil and you could expect them to do their homework. Now, you're expecting everybody to collaborate on a Google Doc, share it with each other, and email it or share it to the teacher when it's finished. You know, what's the expectation? Do all the students have the tools to be able to do that? And can they do it at home and in school as well? You know, so those are the things we want to explore.
In most cases, the device itself is less important than what the outcome is that you're working towards. And whether we use a Samsung Chromebook or a Dell Chromebook or a Lenovo Chromebook, it usually, I mean, it doesn't matter. The reason we went with Dells, you mentioned instead of Samsungs, is the Samsung ones were slippery and we kept seeing 4th and 5th graders drop them. And the Dells ones have a rubberized finish. They don't drop those, so let's get those instead. You know, I mean, it's something like that, that until you start to investigate. You know, Chris and I sat at Oak Street one day, and we had the kids uncart and recart the Chromebooks. And we wanted to see if they could do it, and how the pins would hold up and things like that. And how many kids they kept dropping downstairs. And we're like, oh, right? And they were these slippery, like shiny, they look like Apple devices, which they didn't look that way, so they could, you know, because everybody likes that aesthetic. But, you know, as soon as we saw the Dell ones that have a rubberized coating, you know, it's like a football, they're not going to drop that one. And sure enough, just that choice, you know, that it was much more important. Question?
Just a comment, going back to the school, we do definitely use the Chromebook very frequently. Actually, fighting for the Chromebook, single final way. And our teaching has completely changed because of the Chromebook. So, number one, we're not using desktop. And number two, the access to the internet and the Chromebooks gives the students the opportunity to really do research and really find out from the news. And they're very, very effective. We use Google Classroom. So if I really set up
Thanks so much. And thank you for letting us
Thank you.
present.
Thanks, guys.
So we're up to the superintendent's report. Could I have a motion? Deb? A second? Rhonda? And we're voting on 2, 3, and 4. Yeah.
So we're not voting on item number 1, but I wanted to share a little bit with you about the Ridge High School PTO mini grants. We'd like to start sharing a little bit more about what's going on with staff and some of the cool things that they have done or are doing. And for this meeting, I wanted to talk a little bit about these Ridge High School PTO mini grants and to thank the Ridge High School PTO for making these donations. There were 4 of them, I believe, that were awarded for this winter. The first one went to Jennifer Coran, and that had to do with an honorarium for some traveling for the Grooversity, which is an innovative and creative drumming project envisioned by Brazilian percussionist Marcos Santos. The second one was for Frank Cacavalli in technology education, and that has some tools, variable speed wood lathe, and some chisel sets that were awarded for his project. The third one was for David Ostremski in language arts, some equipment in the form of a black camcorder and accessories from Samsung, video camera tripod, SD card and protected case. And the fourth one, Dan Smith had written a mini grant for some chemistry equipment. It looks like it's in the form of some posters for the classroom and a Spectrovirus Plus vernier. Vernier? Okay. Is Dan here?
Yeah.
Help me out, Dan. What the heck is that? No, I know he's not here. But in any event, we wanted to share some positive things. These are some great things that our teachers have done in terms of actively pursuing these mini grants with our PTO. So we had a really nice collaboration between the staff and our PTO in funding some of their projects. The all-in cost for the donations that the PTO is going to make for this is just over $3,000. So thanks to the PTO for that. I wanted to also recognize Karen Hudak. Karen has been working with a parent volunteer the last couple of years, and so I want to thank the parent volunteer who the board has actually appointed to be a parent coach for the middle school National Science Bowl competition team. And so this is really a shout out to both Mrs. Hudak for working with this parent, and also to the parent for all their volunteer service. And congratulations to the coach and 7 team members who recently became finalists in advancing to the national finals of the National Science Bowl. They beat out some pretty stiff competition in the state of New Jersey to get first place and move on to a national competition. So congratulations to that group. And wonderful news. And finally, just a few athletic announcements, some of the accomplishments going on there. We had the board approved travel for the Ridge High School competition cheerleading team. They placed 3rd in their competition in Orlando. And they were the only Somerset County team to advance to the semifinals. And incidentally, there is I found out, this wasn't part of the board's approval for overnight travel, but there were also some middle school students that traveled to compete in the same event. Not an official school team, but they are a club team that I understand won first place, I think. Sorry. 7th and 8th graders. They competed against 20 other teams from around the country, earning them 6th place in the nation. So that's a pretty outstanding accomplishment as well. So wanted to share that with you. And I know that on Wednesday, I think Bev actually shared this with me also, the state championships are going on in fencing, and the boys fencing team is competing in the state championship against Bernard's, actually, our neighboring school district, but it's actually in Morse Hill. I guess they host it at Morse Hills every year, Rich was telling me, and that's on Wednesday at 7 p.m. For those that are interested, Rich also shared with me that the boys hockey team was competing today in the state tournament. They're the number 4 seed, and when I spoke to him this afternoon, they were winning their game today 4-0. But I don't know what the final outcome. He said he expected them to win. 9-1. 9-1, thank you. Okay, so they did win. Rich predicted that accurately. So congratulations to them, they're moving on. And he also shared with me that there are some students he believes that advanced to the meet of champions for both track and swimming this coming weekend, but he didn't have the names yet. So anyway, lots of good stuff going on, and I want to share that with you. Now the items that you're voting on, obviously the HIB report, and then I shared with you the document on the QSAC equivalency application. I talked about this at the last board meeting. We posted online documents for the public to review, but basically what that does is it moves our next formal state monitoring review out 3 years. So I shared a copy of that with you. And then finally, the ESEA Accountability Action Plan 2015 Participation Rate and Assurances. This is the action plan that school districts had to do if their participation rates on the PARCC test were less than 95%. So we put together an action plan that we have to submit to the county office. I shared that with you as well. But basically, it's our effort to communicate to parents how we're changing the administration a little bit this year in accordance with the fact that the test, is a little bit shorter. And also there is only one administration per building, if you will, instead of the 2 rounds of PBA and EOY that we had last year, separated by 4 or 5 weeks. So we're trying to get the word out that things are a little bit more streamlined this year. And we're sending out some letters this week. Actually, I know some of the principals have already sent out information about PARCC testing. Sending out a letter on Friday, in the Friday folder, I believe Mr. Howell is as well, for some information about that to try to see if we can get our participation rates up a little bit. Districts that had the low participation rates had to do these action plans, so this is approving our action plan to get submitted to the county office. That's it.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes?
Mrs. Swarner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Bullridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McKeon?
Yes.
Madam President?
We are up to public comment on agenda items. If anyone has any public comment, come up, sign your name, and tell your name.
Hi, Jen Horn from 23 Woodstone Road. I have a couple comments. The one was a technology presentation, which was fine, I guess. I had seen the K through 5 presentation on this before, and a couple of questions were, no one really talked about how much it costs, how much all this is going to cost, like in real numbers, regarding, more Chromebooks you have to buy, or how much we've already spent, and the breakdown between, you said you spent we bought $1,600, I think that was like part of the $1 million that we spent between the PARCC testing and the upgrading of the technology for the PARCC testing. I'm assuming that it included the $1,600, and then I was wondering how many were actually bought by the PTOs and how much was spent on them, just out of curiosity, and how many we actually have altogether. I know it's 2 to 1, but I don't know how many Chromebooks we have. And then, because a couple of issues, no one really talked about the GAFE, like the Google apps for education. And I had brought this up at the last meeting about how they're being sued in California for data mining students' information through the Google apps and for education, which I think they said they stopped, but who knows? It's Google. When I was speaking with, I can't remember. One of the guys, and I was saying that, really we have a privacy, we have our own contract, but it's really just a gentleman's agreement. It's not law that they can't go in and take any information they want from the cloud or from, they're just saying, oh, we'll agree to that. It's just something everyone agreed to, it's not law anywhere. So I worry a little bit about all the information we're putting in a cloud of all my children's information. I know we're just numbers now, I don't think they can get anything like that, but that just is a little worrisome to me. And then, I was looking at this article from the Washington Post, and it was saying that with the Chromebooks, they're already uploaded with all the stuff, and then if they search on search or Maps or YouTube and Google News, so if they log into their educational account, into their Google, and then they move on to look at something else, that then Google has every right to use that information to track them. I mean, I don't know. It's just a worry. And then there's something called Chrome Sync that lets Google users report their own browsing history, passwords, and other stuff between any Chromebooks or Chrome browsers, and that if they do that, Google also has rights to take, they can use that information however they want regarding like sending ads or anything like that. So I just something to think about. It's out there. I mean, I think California, and I know states are passing their own laws. I don't think there's really much of a national law, but it's just something that worries me a little bit that no one even mentioned at all up here regarding our upgrading our technology. I also don't think that kids in kindergarten through 2nd grade should really be using Chromebooks that much, because our youngest learners are already being bogged down by the Common Core. They don't need any more they're hands-on. They should be, we have great teachers that can probably be more creative than just putting a kid in front of a computer that young. And also all these devices that we have that we've gotten at different times. So I guess there's a renewal schedule. There must be, we must have all homework dates and a rolling schedule on how they have to be replaced and when. And that would be like I guess that would be like a yearly cost almost that has to get built into the technology budget. And I just wonder how much is budgeted for that and how much that would be. All right, that's one. And then regarding the park and everything like that, I actually went to the meeting in Trenton, and I spoke in front of Mr. Vidrin, who is actually here for one of our meetings. And this is the second time I've done that. regarding their wanting to actually use the PARCC test as a requirement for the 2021, 2022s, I think. They're in 7th grade now, which I'm completely against. I'm hopefully that we won't even have to worry about that in the next year or two. And no matter how many letters you send, I don't really think, PARCC does us any favors. It doesn't do our teachers any favors. It doesn't do our kids any favors. I don't care how short you make it. It doesn't mean it's any better. It still means 255 minutes of a 3rd grader testing, sitting in front of a Chromebook for 90 minutes at a time without even being able to ask the teacher for help. For an 8-year-old, that seems like a bit much to me. For any kids, but especially for our youngest kids, as 3rd graders, to sit for 90 minutes at a desk in front of a computer, ask questions, and they can't even raise their hand. I just think it's and not only that, but the results we got back were 9 months later, you couldn't, I don't know what you're planning on using these results for, but they're useless this year. And are they going to be useless again next year? We're going to already mound up all the PARCC scheduling, but it's still a lot of time. There's still time taken out of everyone's schedule and day, and we have to stop using the Chromebooks for everybody else, everything. It just disrupts everything. It just seems like a big waste of time for us, and I'm hoping that actually more people don't take it, and then we can really try to get it. But thanks very much.
Does anyone else have public comments on the agenda item? Okay, we'll close public comment, and we're up to approval of minutes. Can I have a roll call? Oh, I'm sorry, need a motion. Robin and Beck. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Burnham?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dutton?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McKeon?
Yes.
Madam President?
Okay, we're up to committee reports. The first one is finance. We have 6 items. Can I have a motion? Vicky, second? Karen, thank you. Okay. Let's see. These are all pretty routine items. The first 3 are just the usual agenda items. Number 4 is home instruction for a student. Number 5 is professional development expenses. And number 6 is agreements with the Somerset County Educational Services Commission for the 2016-17 school year for all of our non-public instructional services. And they always take care of the non-public items for our district. Does anybody have any questions on these items?
I don't remember hearing anything radically different about those 6, item 6. Is there any significant change in the times?
No, I mean, for us, none of that comes to the district. It's all passed through. So districts throughout the state act as a conduit for the State Department of Education to pass these legislatively stipulated, if you will, or mandated funds through to non-public schools. So we're a gatekeeper, really. So none of it comes to us. It has no impact on our instruction and our classes.
Don't we pay for some of it though, I think?
No, we don't pay for anything.
Well, disregard the question.
Okay, so can we have a roll call?
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Mrs. Horner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dutton?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McKeon? Madam President?
I'm going to report on the Finance Committee meeting from February 17th. So the first item that we talked about was an update on the health benefits. And we've been getting updates for several months on the the run-out period on the FY 13-14 Horizon claims, and Mr. McLaughlin says he has all the claims information through December 2015, which is the end of the 2013-14 run-out period. And the check from December 15, 2015 is sufficient for the final payment. The next item was an update on refunding of the $9.8 million in 2006 bonds. In December of 2015, Mary Lyons of Phoenix Advisors presented a bond refunding proposal to the Finance Committee. Approximately $9.8 million of the $10 million in 2006 bonds is callable as of July 15, 2016. This is the last opportunity to do bond refunding until 2022. To do the refunding, the board needs to have a public hearing in March, and the plan is to go to market in April of 2016. Once the bonds are refunded, the debt service savings will begin in the 2017-18 school year. In that year, the savings will be $260,000, and then from 2018-19 through 2030, the debt service savings will be about $130K per year. And Mr. McLaughlin noted that in the past 4 years, 75% of the district's debt has been restructured, and all of it has resulted in cost savings. The next item is a 2016-17 budget update. Mr. McLaughlin presented updated information on the preliminary 2016-17 school budget. The local tax levy will increase the budget by 2%, which is approximately $1.6 million. Mr. McLaughlin expects, well, actually, we have our state aid. Right? Yeah, it's about, we have about an increase of about $70,000 for next year. And then the assumption is that the extraordinary aid and subscription busing revenue will be the same as in 2015-16. Additional federal grant money is expected for Title I and Title III immigrant funds. Cost increases are expected in 2016-17 for transportation, health benefits, technology upgrades, implementation of the next generation science standards in grades K through 5, and implementation of the new STEM program. The committee did look at the technology upgrades, and you know, it does represent a challenge for us. The district smart boards are now 10 years old, and they need replacing. Old projectors and tablets need replacing, as do old computers in the school buildings. New science materials are needed to implement the next generation science standards in the elementary grades, starting in 2016-17. Two options are possible to reduce costs. We could phase in the new science materials over a 2-year period or purchase less expensive materials. 3 capital projects are planned for summer 2016. There's going to be univentilator replacement and an HVAC upgrade at Liberty Corner. 40% of this project is funded by state development authority grants. The girls' varsity softball field will undergo renovations. This project is going out to bid in late March, and the estimated cost is $175,000. And then the final one is elementary school security projects. The estimated cost for all 4 elementary school buildings is $175,000, and a state safety grant will fund $100,000 of this project. Does anyone have any questions?
The 70,000, I don't remember how much the state aid, not the extraordinary aid, but the state aid, it's not a big increase in...
So from 3,172,000 to 3,255,000, so that's like $82,000 increase. And then debt service aid drops from 294 to 281. I'm rounding it off, but it's really $12,000. So it nets out between the reduction in debt service aid, they give us an increase in categorically, an overall increase of $70,000.
So we don't get much state aid anyway, and the increase is small.
Right.
70 over 3 million. I don't know what that percent comes up to.
So it's still about $1.6 million short for one thing. The state district.
Okay, so we're up to personnel. And yeah, there is an addendum that has items 13 and 18. So can I have a motion, Robin? That.
Any questions, personnel items?
I'd like to ask about item 10. Lego Club and Lions Den.
You asked about this last time, those are more mini units for the elementary schools.
Now, this is after school.
After school.
I'm, with the body of knowledge increasing so much, I'm amazed that you can't teach academic courses in these. I mean, it just is a shame that the kids after school can't have academic courses, or at least academic assistance. You can paint it, this is all fun and games, and I'm opposed to that, but it's a shame that we can't teach. I don't know what's the rules, but I'm shocked that the after-school program won't allow educational academic programs.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berman?
Yes, except item 10, I'm going to vote no on item 10. I don't agree with it.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes. And
Dr.
I
Dunn?
love the mini units.
Dr. Dunton?
Yes, and the kids need to have some fun.
Mrs. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Baldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Okay.
I just wanted to say, we did have a personnel meeting on Friday, but I haven't gotten the minutes out yet, so I'll get them on shortly.
We're up to policy, and we have several policies for second reading. So can I have a motion? Deb, second, Karen.
So I have a committee report once we're done voting, but these are all second readings, so they've been approved. No changes. Any questions?
Was there any discussion about that?
Any policies?
And I don't remember any major changes
There-
prior.
There are minor changes associated with law updates and recodifications.
Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Berman?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dunton?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Baldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam President?
Mr. Fry is unavailable this evening, so he's asked me to report out on policy. We met on February 8th. In addition to having committee members in attendance, we were joined by Mr. Hallett and Mr. Hall to discuss modifications to our district's PARCC testing regulation in order to improve processes on how we handle refusals, as well as testing exemptions in the upcoming period. They're fine-tuning this regulation, and all communications regarding PARCC are going to be sent from the building principals via a Friday folder. Any questions?
Okay. So we're up to curriculum. And we don't have anyone.
I'm going to report out on the February 12th curriculum committee meeting.
Well, it's close
Is
to
it okay?
Or
started the meeting with Dr. Henneman covering the STEAM Academy results. We reviewed the results of the interview process. There were a total of 103 applicants to the program. There were only 4 to the sustainability track, so each of those families were contacted and informed that the track would not actually be created, and they were offered the opportunity to apply to another track, which they did. After a week of interviews by the committee of 3, which included 1 administrator, as in district level administrator, pardon me, a building administrator, and then the chair of the overall committee, the top 20 applicants in each track were identified. All the students were notified of their acceptance or placed on a wait list until the scheduling was complete, because some students may not actually accept the spot. Additionally, Dr. Heinemann noted that Project Lead the Way has released new course names for the computer science program to match their partnership with the college board. But it's important to note that those name changes will not be reflected in the program studies until after registration is complete to minimize confusion. Next item was the WAMS STEM results, and that process was still in progress, so we'll hear about that in March or April. Brian also shared with the committee that New Jersey has updated the standards for career-ready practices and career and technical education. There's a pretty substantial, actually, Matt showed us the poster earlier in the presentation, and there's a pretty substantial handout with a lot of detail, but the net is that our district shouldn't feel any significant effect on the courses that we offer. And now for the hot topic. There was a lengthy discussion on the AP Physics situation and what the options are for the students who are finding themselves in the predicament of needing to cover topics for the SAT subject test. Mr. Hall gave a great overview of how we got to where we are. I'll touch on a couple of highlights just to keep everybody on the same page. National Research Council Committee for Advanced Study of Mathematics and Science reviewed the AP Physics B course, which was offered as recently as 2 years ago here at Redridge, and concluded that it was too broad. The College Board then reviewed the AP Physics B course 2 years ago. The review committee concluded that the existing Physics B course encouraged only cursory treatment of very important topics. Physics B course was too broad for a 1-year course, it suggested, and did not allow sufficient time to develop deep conceptual understanding. So as of last year, so 2014, the College Board replaced AP Physics B with AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2. Last year, at Ridge, we attempted to teach AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 together in a single year. Overall, the feedback was that that was an extraordinary piece to move at, especially toward the end, and the teachers struggled to get the material in and really do it its justice. So for this year, the determination was made that we needed to slow down the course and cover the topics as intended by the College Board in Physics 1. In late January, a letter was sent home to AP Physics 1 and 2 students explaining the need to slow the pace of the course. Unfortunately, an unintended consequence of the slowdown is that we won't cover all of the topics that students might need for the SAT subject test to be offered in June. So this presented 2 concerns. One was how do we cover SAT subject test topics that the students who enrolled in this course last year at registration were assured would be covered as part of the course. And 2, how do we handle this beginning next year? So without boring everyone with the very lengthy details of the conversation, we came up with a short-term intervention plan, which includes students receiving direct instruction of concepts on the SAT subject test during the time between the AP exam, which is in early May, and then when the actual subject test takes place, which is in early June. Additionally, a suggestion was made that with teacher agreement, we ask, and Board of Ed approval for a stipend, we ask the teachers to compile some videos from Khan Academy to touch on the topics that would be missing, as well as perhaps give additional opportunities during the week for review of these concepts. Students that would not be taking the SAT subject test will work on an independent project. So that was the short-term solution. The long-term solution was a little bit more heavy on detail. So I don't know if you want me to go through this, or are we going to discuss this topic at this time? We're going to finish the other two items at the end of the curriculum report, and then...
Sure.
Okay. So, only two quick items. One was that just the board-led curriculum committee goals were tabled till next month because of this lengthy discussion. And Marie Mensinger shared with the committee that there's a segment of the special education population who are quite capable of taking Algebra 1, and the special ed department has proposed a 2-course sequence to complete Algebra 1, and it would be taken over 2 years, and it would be labeled Algebra 1A and Algebra 1B. And that's it. We're done with this discussion. So Robin's suggesting I just ask if anyone has any questions other than the physics.
Okay, I'm seeing body language cues here. So let me jump in. With respect to the physics curriculum, really I think there's an item that was already approved on the agenda that corresponded to the plan that Ms. Gray laid out in terms of having someone that can provide some extra support and tutorial time outside the regular school day for those students working on preparing for the SAT subject tests that are in the current AP Physics cohort, and also to use that time after the AP exam is given in May to continue to work on those topics. Going forward for next school year, as Ms. Gray pointed out, we had a lot of discussion in the committee, and what I'm hoping to get tonight is sort of a direction from the board for myself and actually both Dr. Heineman and Mr. Hall, who I asked to stay with us for this discussion, so that they know going forward what the marching orders are in terms of our sophomore students who will be planning their junior year coursework, I believe starting this week, in their high school selection process. So we want to make sure that we have a clear sense of where we're going for next year. And if I can summarize, I think the basic idea coming out of the committee was threefold. One, for students that would take AP Physics 1 without the notion of trying to do both AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 prior to the SAT subject test, that we would have a sequence of self-study that we would provide to the students that they could start on early in the school year, knowing that they wouldn't be taking AP Physics 2 prior to the SAT subject test, and also still have the same opportunity after the AP Physics 1 exam was given in May to have some more time before the actual SAT subject test to prepare and ask questions in class. The other thing that we forgot to mention for the current year was that for those students taking the SAT subject test, we were going to get them the book this year as sort of a gratis, just for the 1 year, to help them with this project. And then going forward next year, those students would know at the beginning of the year that the Physics 1 course was not going to cover all the topics, and they wanted to get the book ahead of time and start studying at the beginning of the year. They didn't want time to do it. So that was one scenario, and I think there was a lot of support so that anyone that was just taking AP Physics 1 would know from the get-go, this is the name of the game. If you want to prepare for the SAT subject test, this is what you need to do. And I think the committee was pretty unanimous in supporting that. The second idea was that students could take AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 concurrently in their junior year. And I think there was general support for that as well, if the students really, really wanted to take 2 AP Physics courses concurrently, while it's not necessarily an ideal scenario, in talking to the teachers and Dr. Heineman and Mr. Hall, it was a possibility. It was something that could happen, although less than ideal, it could happen. That's a lot of physics. That's 2 7-period-a-week courses, 14 periods of physics a week, and kind of locking up your schedule to take 2 AP physics classes is intense. But it is doable, theoretically, for students that want to make sure that all the topics for the SAT subject test are covered in class. And also to provide those students, if they really wanted to, the ability to take both of the AP tests, AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2, in their junior year. That is a possibility. Thirdly, there was a discussion of some support for the idea of putting together a new class, which would essentially be the same content as the AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2, but to, since we're not able to really get that done in 7 periods a week now, to maybe create a double period, 5 days a week, 2 periods, 10 periods in the week. So that would provide more time. And there was support for looking at that as well. And in speaking to the teachers, our sense again was, well, probably not ideal, not really fully in the spirit of what the new AP Physics curriculum is all about, but for the highly initiated students, we could probably see that working. If that's something that the board wants us to work on, then that would be something that we would have to do over the summer. Not necessarily reinvent the content, because the content is there, but the sequencing, the timing, and how that could be packed into 10 periods a week, when in fact what we're really talking about going forward is AP Physics 1, 7 periods a week, AP Physics 2, another 7 periods a week, really 14 periods of work getting compressed into 10 periods. But for the highly motivated, that may be doable too. So we really just kind of need some direction from the board on this one. I don't think that there is really a wrong answer. There are pros and cons to each. Taking 2 AP Physics in the same year is intense. Might be stressful for the wrong students. Taking a double period of physics at 10 periods a week to pack it all in is also probably going to be very intense and probably wrong for some students. But these are choices, these are things that we could do, and things that would be okay for some students. So I don't think there's really a wrong answer. It's a question of people making the right choices, and provided some information. We talked to Dr. Heineman and Mr. Hall and I, we talked about, whatever comes out of tonight's discussion, we will make an accelerated effort to communicate to parents of 10th grade students and to the students themselves and to the guidance counselors. Say, look, this is what we're going to do for junior year, next year. So it's a challenge. It'll be a communication challenge, but if we want to go there and offer some things that are a little bit different for those students to ensure that if they really want to, they can have all the SAT subject test content taught at school, and if they really want to, they can have that preparation prior to June of their junior year, and if they really want to, they could conceivably take both AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 tests under those 2 ideas. Of course, if they don't, they could take AP Physics 1 on that would be their physics course junior year. They can kind of do a self-study program with some guidance in May from their AP Physics teacher to prepare for the SAT subject test. And when they're finished at the end of the year, after taking just AP Physics 1, they could schedule in their senior year AP Physics 2 or AP Physics C. And I've been talking a lot about physics, so Matt and Brian, if I've gotten all this right, just give me the nod. And I know that I've learned a lot about physics in the last couple of weeks. So, not that I can teach it, but I did like it. And I know because I took it twice in college, for reasons that we will not exposed to the public. But I hold no animosity to the subject. So anyway, that's kind of the direction that we want to have from the board, because we want to do right by a situation that has gotten to be a bit of a challenge and didn't go perfectly for us, to be candid. But to be fair, we knew we were trying something that might not work. And it didn't work out great, so we're punting and trying to come up with the best option for next year.
So does anyone have any comments about?
Yeah, I have a question, because I'm not on curriculum, so I wasn't privy to all these discussions. Is there enough interest in physics to allow the option to take the physics 1 and the physics 2 concurrently, and offer the special class 10 periods a week, which is physics 1 and physics 2 together? Do we know? I just don't want to spin our wheels and develop a new course over the summer and then find out only 3 or 4 students are interested.
We're not sure because we haven't put it out there yet, but I think the feeling in the committee discussion, and anyone else is of course welcome to jump in that was there, but I think the feeling in the committee was that it might provide the students more flexibility in building the rest of their schedule if they were committing 10 periods a week to do it instead of 14 periods a week. So we think that there's probably a group of students, maybe a section or so, who might want to take us up on that, to make one section of it. You know, we know that with the AP Physics 1 course, or any AP Physics course, it's 7 periods a week already, so you're really filling in those other 3 periods that you sort of had some flexibility to do, you know, maybe partial dovetail gym or study hall or something. You know, you might probably be giving up some flexibility, but it would be 10 periods instead of 14, which really is a little bit better.
And my biggest concern is making sure the students who choose to take this very challenging track are successful and not frustrated. So I know we have some pretty rigorous screening in place just to qualify for an AP course, but I would like to think that we would do even a little bit of additional screening to make sure the students who are choosing to take this very rigorous AP Physics track are the ones who are going to be able to handle the stress and be successful.
Yeah, we talked about that, and some of it, I think, and also talking to Brian about a little bit on the outside, I think that almost by, some of that I'm hoping is going to be controlled by the nature of what you're signing up for. This is going to be a lock in your schedule if you're doing 2 periods or 10 periods or 14. It's a lot. So I think that's going to provide one level of screening right off the bat because of the commitment in and of itself, regardless of your qualifications for it. But one of the other discussions has been, you know, kind of that idea of the concurrent enrollment, and is that really the right thing to do? AP is suggesting that you do Physics 1 and then Physics 2. To be really properly prepared to take Physics 2, you've already had Physics 1. So there's some concern about the idea of the concurrent enrollment, which would be, yeah, which in the beginning, but probably less of a concern in the 10-period scenario, because theoretically you'd kind of be doing one then the other, more or less in sequence, I think. So that, from that perspective, that might be the better way to go. But, you know, if we allowed both paths, if we said, look, we're gonna put together a new course and we'll allow concurrent enrollment, and you choose. I don't know. I don't know how much competition there would be for doing both.
That's what concerns me.
Right.
If these highly motivated students have both choices, are we going to dilute it completely, or are we better off picking one or the other and then tracking the success and revamping if it's not working? Just a thought.
Yeah, and I've been doing my reading of the college board classes. I have some concern about them doing, you know, Physics 2 at the same time as Physics 1, because it's supposed to build on it. They're supposed to have some knowledge of physics already to do Physics 2. And you know, another point is that the honors physics class does prepare you for the subject test. It covers all the things. So I think in the communications, you know, and you can go from you could do honors physics and then go to AP Physics senior year. So
I don't think that helps as well. You can't go
To
from
see.
honors physics to
lot of kids do, because I think a lot of them are already in AP Physics, but technically you can. So I think if a student, I think the kids who really want to do the AP, you know, would probably go for the 10 period class. But I think we have to be careful that the students have a math background and stuff too for that. And just make sure we're looking at that also, I think, aside from just their grade and chemistry. You know what I mean? But, and make it clear that it's in the description of the class that's going to be really hard, and that there is honors physics. If you can go that route.
Or just Physics 1.
Or AP Physics 1. I mean, you know, there's a lot of options, so. I think the concurrent one bothers me because I don't know that they'll be as successful in Physics 2. And it also just bothers me that it'll take up that many periods in your schedule. But,
I want to compliment the committee on out-of-the-box thinking, and I really, really like the 10-period option for a certain subset of kids who are going to want all of that, and who I think we'll have a section of students who are capable of and interested in that. It remains to be seen. I'm not as worried about offering 1 and 2 concurrently because there are different subjects, and it's mechanics, and the other one is electricity and magnetism. But 14 periods a week is a lot of physics. I think that it's going to impact the rest of their lives. There are other options, there are other, elective choices. So for those ultra-motivated future engineers, and I think that this double period option is terrific. And for those who can't fit it in their schedule, I like that you'll already have put forth some effort on what's happening this year. So this Khan Academy design will already be pre-existing, and also whatever curriculum is planned for May, the month of May after the test. So making those available for students who select just AP Physics 1 and ultimately want to do the subject test, I think is wise to provide that option after we've been forced to come up with it this year anyway. But I think that investment in compacting the Physics 1, 2 for the highly motivated will pay off.
The details I'm not familiar with, so that, I don't know what the problems in AP Physics look like with the course curriculum, and I'm sure a couple of our kids took it, but it's almost the foundation, and thank goodness we found it, because to have that with only 40% of the physics program being presented, and then you try and take the engineering subject test for physics, you're missing 60% of the program, so to get into engineering school. I don't know how the college organizations are today, but when I went to school, roughly 1/4 of the students were engineers, tried to be anyway. 1/4 were business, 1/4 were arts, and 1/4 was science. So that was the time of Sputnik, so there was a big emphasis to engineering. You're not going to take the AP high school course and avoid taking physics in college, at least in engineering. So also labs, we didn't have any labs, but we spent at least 2 nights a week in problem-solving sessions, a couple hours each, and we had a test every 2 weeks. It was the course physics was the thing that either you passed and continued in engineering or you dropped out. It was a very, very good, and we didn't have the labs, it was all problem solving. I don't know what the AP course is. From hearing some of the discussion, a lot of it is labs, and so that's not quite so important, I don't think, as the problem solving, which is just, I brought 3 books in, and I read a couple of the problems at the end of each chapter. I don't have a clue what the problems were about.